Morning arrived with a golden glow across the sea. For many hours, the ship had sailed steadily through calm waters. Telemachus stood near the bow as the first rays of sunlight spread across the horizon. Land, one of the sailors pointed ahead. Telemachus lifted his eyes. Far in the distance, a dark line appeared where the sea met the sky. As the ship moved closer, the coastline slowly emerged from the morning mist. Hills rose above the shore. Small buildings became visible, and thin streams of smoke drifted upward into the air. The kingdom of Pylos stood before them. A feeling of anticipation stirred within the young prince. This was the first foreign land he had ever visited. Somewhere upon those shores lived Nestor, the wise king who had fought beside Odysseus during the Trojan War. Perhaps he possessed the answers Telemachus had traveled so far to find. The ship continued toward the harbor. As they drew nearer, unusual sounds carried across the water. Voices, hundreds of voices. Telemachus looked toward the shoreline in surprise. Rows of altars lined the shore. Large crowds had gathered near the sea. Men, women, and children stood together beneath the morning sun. Smoke rose from sacred fires. The scent of burning offerings drifted across the breeze. The people of Pylos were holding a great sacrifice to Poseidon, ruler of the sea. Black bulls had been brought to the ceremony. The entire shoreline seemed alive with celebration and worship. Telemachus had never witnessed anything so grand. For a moment, he simply stared. The ceremony stretched as far as he could see. Beside him stood Mentor, who was truly Athena in disguise. The goddess watched the gathering calmly. Telemachus felt a sudden wave of nervousness. He had crossed the sea. He had left Ithaca behind. Yet now he must step onto unfamiliar shores and speak with strangers. What if no one knew what had happened to Odysseus? What if Nestor could not help him? Athena seemed to sense his thoughts. She encouraged him to be brave. His father had spoken before kings. His father had stood among heroes. Now it was Telemachus' turn. The ship finally reached the shore. Telemachus took a deep breath. The smoke rose toward the bright blue sky. The crowd continued its sacrifice for Poseidon. Before him stood the kingdom of Pylos and the wise King Nestor. Ahead lay answers that had been hidden for many years. Then he stepped onto the sands of Pylos. The next stage of his journey had begun. Morning sun shined brightly over the shores of Pylos. The sea breeze carried the scent of roasted offerings across the shore. Smoke rose from the sacred altars and drifted into the sky. Hundreds of people had gathered for the ceremony. Men offered prayers. Women brought gifts. Children watched in wonder. Then his eyes fell upon an elderly man. Though age had silvered his hair, his presence commanded respect. This was Nestor, a veteran of the Trojan War, king of Pylos. A man who had once fought beside the greatest heroes of Greece. Telemachus felt his heart beat faster. For years he had listened to stories about Odysseus. Now he stood before a man who had truly known him. Athena, still disguised as Mentor, noticed the prince's hesitation. She spoke softly. "Telemachus, why do you hesitate? I have never spoken before such a great king." Athena smiled. "Your father stood before kings and warriors without fear. You are his son." The word strengthened him. Nestor welcomed the strangers according to the ancient laws of hospitality, before asking any questions. Together they approached the gathering. Wine was poured. Seats were prepared. No guest was to leave hungry. Food was brought. No traveler was to be turned away. Only after the meal did Nestor finally turn toward them. "Strangers," he said kindly, "tell me who you are and what brings you across the sea." For a moment, silence hung in the air. Telemachus gathered his courage. Then he spoke. "I am Telemachus, son of Odysseus, prince of Ithaca." The moment the name left his lips, a change came over the old king. Memories filled his eyes. Another world, Odysseus. The days of Troy, He looked toward the sea as though seeing another time. Many had heard stories of the famous king of Ithaca. The crowd listened quietly. Nestor whispered, "There was no man wiser. He had fought beside him." But Nestor had known him personally, shared counsel with him. He witnessed his greatness with his own eyes. The same thoughtful expression. The old king looked again at Telemachus. For the first time, he noticed the resemblance. The same quiet strength. "You truly are your father's son," Nestor said. Pride filled Telemachus' heart. Yet there was still one question that mattered most. The question he had crossed the sea to ask. Nestor saw the concern on his face. Many years had passed since the end of the war. Many heroes had returned home. Others had vanished, and the fate of Odysseus remained one of the greatest mysteries in Greece. Still, Nestor promised to tell Telemachus everything he knew. The answers would not be simple. But the young prince had come too far to turn back now. As the morning feast continued beneath the bright sky of Pylos, Telemachus listened. At last he was hearing the story of his father from a man who had stood beside him during the greatest war of their age. The waves rolled gently against the shores of Pylos as Nestor prepared to speak of Troy, of kings, of heroes, and of the last days he had seen Odysseus. Continued beneath the bright skies of Pylos. Telemachus listened carefully as King Nestor spoke. Around them, the sounds of the celebration slowly faded into the background. The old king's eyes drifted toward the sea. For a moment, it seemed as though he were looking far beyond the shores of Pylos, far beyond the present, back to the days of Troy. "Many years have passed," Nestor began. "Yet I remember those days as though they were yesterday." The old king spoke of the great war, the towering walls of Troy, the countless battles fought beneath its gates, the kings and heroes who had gathered from across Greece. Some had sought glory. Among them all stood Odysseus. Many sought to return home. Others sought honor. Nestor smiled faintly. "Your father." Again and again, the old king praised Odysseus' intelligence. There was no man wiser. When danger threatened, Odysseus remained calm. When the Greek leaders disagreed, Odysseus often found solutions. Telemachus listened in silence. When others acted from pride, Odysseus relied upon wisdom. Every word painted a clearer picture of the father he barely knew. The stories felt different coming from Nestor. These were not legends. These were memories. The old king had stood beside Odysseus. As the feast continued, Nestor's expression grew more serious. He had fought beside him beneath the walls of Troy. He had heard his voice. Then he spoke of the final days after Troy had fallen. The Greek army prepared to return home, but the peace they had long awaited did not arrive. Disagreements divided the leaders. Some wished to leave immediately. Others wished to remain. Tempers flared. Nestor explained how the fleet eventually separated. Even mighty kings argued among themselves. Friendships were tested. Friends who had fought side by side for years suddenly found themselves on opposite sides. Ships sailed in different directions. The memory still troubled him. It was during this confusion that Nestor last saw Odysseus, taking different paths home. "We both wished each other well," Nestor said quietly. "But after that day, our paths never crossed again." For a moment, disappointment touched his heart. Telemachus lowered his eyes. Yet the old king could offer no certain answer. He had hoped Nestor might know what became of Odysseus. Only stories, only memories, only fragments of the past. Still, those fragments were precious. For the first time in his life, Telemachus felt closer to his father. Not because he had found him, but because he had begun to understand the kind of man Odysseus truly was. Nestor noticed the young prince's disappointment. "If any man could survive great hardships, it is your father." The old king leaned forward. "Do not lose hope." The words carried the weight of experience. Nestor had witnessed the courage of Odysseus with his own eyes. If anyone had reason to believe the king of Ithaca still lived, it was him. The feast continued, and as Telemachus listened to the stories of Troy, he realized his journey was far from over. A king named Menelaus. There was still another king who might know more. And there perhaps waited the answers he sought. A king who had returned home after many struggles. The feast in Pylos continued as the afternoon sun drifted across the sky. Telemachus sat beside King Nestor, listening carefully to every word. The stories of Troy had filled his mind with wonder. The tales of Odysseus had filled his heart with pride. At last Nestor placed a gentle hand upon the young prince's shoulder, yet the answer he sought still remained beyond his reach. "My son," he said kindly, "I cannot tell you where Odysseus is." The words stung. Hearing them spoken aloud was difficult, though Telemachus had prepared himself for disappointment. For a moment, silence settled between them. And he saw something else. He saw courage. He saw determination there. Nestor studied the young prince's face. "You have traveled far to seek the truth," Nestor continued, "and your journey is not over." Telemachus lifted his eyes. At the mention of the name, many of those gathered around the feast grew quiet. "There is another who may know more. Menelaus. Menelaus, one of the greatest leaders of the Trojan War. Among all the Greek kings who had returned home, if anyone possessed news of Odysseus, it might be him. He told of distant lands, of long voyages." Nestor began speaking of Menelaus, of the many years it had taken the Spartan king to return home after Troy. As Telemachus listened, hope slowly returned. Perhaps the answer he sought still waited ahead. Perhaps his father was not lost forever. The sun slowly lowered toward the western horizon. The great feast was beginning to draw to a close. Telemachus was surprised. The roads are long, and the world is safer with a trusted companion. He thanked the king for his kindness. The young prince bowed respectfully. Servants readied horses. Chariots were inspected. As evening approached, preparations began. Food and supplies were gathered for the journey ahead. The road to Sparta would begin with the coming dawn. That night, Telemachus remained awake longer than usual. He stood outside and looked toward the stars. Only days earlier, he had been standing within the halls of Ithaca. Now he stood in a foreign kingdom, preparing to journey even farther from home. His world was changing. With every step, he felt himself becoming stronger, more confident. Far above, Athena watched silently, more certain of his purpose. The goddess had guided him from Ithaca to Pylos. Soon she would guide him farther still. The path ahead remained uncertain, but destiny was moving forward, and Telemachus was finally moving with it. Evening air was calm over the shores of Pylos. The sacrifices to Poseidon were complete. The people slowly returned to their homes. The great feast had ended. While the last rays of sunlight faded, Telemachus remained near Nestor and his sons. Only a few days earlier he had departed Ithaca, filled with uncertainty about the future. The young prince felt grateful for the kindness he had received. Now he sat among friends. The road to Sparta still lay ahead, and many questions remained unanswered. As darkness settled across the land, Nestor turned toward Mento. Many throughout the feast had noticed how thoughtful and intelligent Mentor seemed. The old king thanked him for his wisdom and guidance. Again and again, his advice had proven wise. Nestor offered prayers for the traveler and wished him a safe journey. Then something remarkable happened. Before the eyes of everyone gathered, Athena prepared to depart. The goddess had hidden her true identity throughout the journey. She had walked among mortals disguised as Mentor. She had guided Telemachus, encouraged him. Now the time had come for the people of Pylos to understand who had truly stood among them, protected him. A great sense of awe swept through the gathering. Suddenly, Athena revealed her divine power. This was no ordinary traveler. This was a goddess, protector of heroes, Athena's daughter of Zeus. Silence fell upon the gathering. The goddess departed before their eyes. No one spoke for several moments. The people of Pylos stood amazed. Nestor himself was filled with reverence. He realized that the gods had taken a special interest in Telemachus. Athena would not guide an ordinary man in such a way. The young prince suddenly understood something important. He was not alone. The gods themselves watched over his journey, not because he sought glory, but because he was the son of Odysseus. Nestor looked at Telemachus with new respect, and because his path was part of something greater than himself. If Athena favors you, then your journey has not been abandoned by the gods. The words stayed with Telemachus. The fear that had once controlled him seemed farther away than ever before. Tomorrow he would begin the journey to Sparta. Tomorrow he would continue his search. And tonight, for the first time, he truly believed he might succeed. The sea shimmered beneath the moonlight. Above them, the stars filled the sky. And somewhere beyond the reach of mortal eyes, Athena watched the young prince's journey continue exactly as she had planned. Across the countryside as the sun climbed steadily into the sky, Telemachus sat beside Pisistratus, watching the landscape unfold before him. Fields stretched across the hills. Small villages appeared in the distance before slowly fading behind them. Farmers worked beneath the warm sunlight. Everything felt different from Ithaca, different from the world he had always known. For most of his life, the palace had been his entire world. Now, with every mile they traveled, Greece seemed larger than he had ever imagined. The wheels rolled steadily along the road. The horses moved with confidence and strength. As the day passed, the two young men spoke often about their homes. They shared stories about their families, about the expectations placed upon them as the sons of great men. Telemachus learned much about Nestor's household. Pisistratus spoke proudly of his father, a king respected throughout Greece for his wisdom and fairness. In return, Pisistratus asked about Ithaca. He asked about Odysseus. He asked about Penelope. At the mention of his father's name, Telemachus grew quiet. For a moment, he stared ahead at the distant road. "I know him only through stories," he admitted. "Sometimes I wonder if I can ever live up to the man everyone remembers." You do not need to become Odysseus. No one had ever said such a thing before. You only need to become Telemachus. The words surprised him. For years, others had compared him to his father. They spoke of Odysseus' victories, his intelligence, his fame, his courage. The sun slowly drifted toward the western sky. The road continued through the afternoon. Rarely did anyone ask who Telemachus himself wished to become. As evening approached, they arrived at the home of King Nestor, a respected ally and friend. According to the sacred customs of hospitality, travelers were welcomed. Water was offered for washing. Comfortable places were arranged for rest. Food was prepared. The long journey would continue tomorrow. That evening, upon everything that had happened, now he had crossed the sea, met Nestor. Only a short time ago, he had stood within the halls of Ithaca, uncertain and afraid, and traveled across lands he had never imagined seeing. Received guidance from Athena. The journey was changing him, slowly, steadily, with every step forward. As darkness settled across the countryside and countless stars appeared overhead, Telemachus looked toward them and wondered where his father might be. Was Odysseus looking upon the same stars? Was he alive? Did he still dream of returning home? The questions remained unanswered, but for the first time, the uncertainty no longer frightened him. Tomorrow they would continue towards Sparta, and he would meet Menelaus. And perhaps there, at last, he would find the clues he had traveled so far to seek.